So a coast and catchment management program provides a tremendous opportunity for coordination of projects. There are more than 30 organisations across the catchment doing great things, but it's ad hoc. We know that climate change and an extra 1.5 million people over the next 20 years is going to put extra pressure on the harbour's health. And what we would like to see is better leadership and coordination reflected through this coast and catchment management program.
We've got stories that talk about even how the river was created. So we knew that health of the river. It was the Paradooey eel that gave us the river and had said that all sea creatures will now learn the laws of the sea. With the bull shark engraving, it was so that we were aware. When we went out to fish, we knew that we had safe passage between two bull shark breeding areas. We know where they are. These things were put into places like this so that the next generation knew, and the generation after that, and we always knew where safe passage was, and that's why it's there.
Well, when these ships came into Sydney Harbour with the first fleet and settled in the Circular Quay area, they decided on a spot where there was a stream. But what they did in settling there, they started polluting it. They started to throw their garbage in, and all the excrement that came out of their animals landed in the tank stream. And that was the first sign of polluting Sydney Harbour. And that continued all the way through to the 1970s, when it became obvious that the harbour was suffering. The harbour was being a dumping ground. So much rubbish got put into the harbour, and as the houses were built around the shores and up into the catchments where the stormwaters were draining down into the harbour, so much of that was left to go into that harbour. And so over time, what we had was effectively a cesspool. So if you stopped those pollutants from going into the harbour, nature would take its course. And that is what's happened. As the industries have been shut down and moved elsewhere, and residences have taken their place, many steps through environmental laws, sound environmental laws, have been put in place to try to stop those pollutants from entering into the harbour. However, we have to be eternally vigilant. And the reason for that is population in the catchments of the harbour is growing, and that means that new developments are likely to create problems associated with drainage unless we have a good land use planning system that recognises that stormwater needs to be managed properly.
We do cleanups at least once a month. There's just an enormous amount of bottles, bottle tops, everything from toothbrushes, clothes, combs, and the amount of styrofoam. It's just revolting. It's filthy, it's unsafe, and it's unhealthy. I suppose I want people to start by putting the rubbish in the bin. If we don't pick any of that up, it ends up down here. I'd love to be able to take my kids down here and jump off, the sea wall and have a swim, and have a swim with lots of thousands of families across Western Sydney. So I think that's my vision. There's lots of creeks that I could just picture, cleaner water and the ability for families just to be able to swim and enjoy themselves in the beautiful natural environment that we have, rather than having to travel a long way or go to pools to actually learn to swim and to cool down and have fun. Just by simply putting rubbish in the bin, it will make a huge difference to our river, making it swimmable again.
You can envisage a catchment as by bringing your hands together and tipping them so that the thumbs become the ridge lines and the pointing downwards towards the tips of the fingers is where the drainage is heading. And the drainage is heading in a way where the water will flow to the harbour.
Sydney Harbour is the largest natural harbour in the world and the largest urban catchment in Australia. So if you're that drop of water and you fall from the sky and you land in Manly, you land in Rose Bay, and you start trickling down to the harbour, what's going to happen? I mean, you could pick up microplastics, you could pick up nutrients, you could pick up pesticides, and all of those things eventually make their way into the harbour. So if you had a little bit of nutrients, say nitrogen or phosphates, or a little bit of pesticides, that then accumulates over time. So we end up with these hot spots of really bad areas. And things like microplastics are an example of that because they might all be coming out of one area and any individual bit isn't a concern. But it's that accumulation over time of each bit adding more and more as it comes in that creates the threat to whatever it is that we value. So do we value the swimming and the fishing? Do we value boating? Or do we value just being able to go down and enjoy the waterway? And those are the things that the Marine Estate Management Strategy has looked at. And so now what we realize is if we want to leave a better legacy for the future, if we want to say that it's still not good enough, we're a little bit better than we were before, we need to collaborate. So we need everyone to come together, and we need the councils to work with the state government, we need the citizens to work with the NGOs, and we all need to form a plan so that we know exactly what we're going to attack.
So what we want to do is capture the contaminants before they enter the harbour. So instead of treating the catchment like a sink, pumping the stormwater away as quickly as possible to reduce flooding, we want to treat it more like a sieve so that we capture water in the catchment and that reduces the contaminants before they enter the harbour.
So the idea behind the treatment plant is we harvest all the water from the gutters and streets from Burwood. We drag it into the treatment plant, harvest it in here, treat it in here, and then send it on to our sports fields for irrigation purposes. That means less contaminants and nasties going out to the water and to the harbours and the rivers.
Sydney Water has a program of naturalising the concrete line channel. That will help filter out pollutants on their way to the harbour.
The concrete channel that was here before was like a highway for water. It was just straight out into the bay, really fast flow. Roughening the channel up with rocks and plants slows the water down, which is a good thing. It's more like a natural flow. So rather than having steep concrete with very little homes for animals and plants to live, you've got a more natural, gently sloped bank with all sorts of nooks and crannies, rocks and plants for animals to live. The Powers Creek naturalisation is a template that could be replicated in other areas. Naturalisation fits well with a regional approach to managing a harbour or any waterway.
Transport New South Wales is doing an amazing job keeping the harbour free of rubbish. Imagine if we could capture that rubbish before it enters the harbour.
Our Maritime Environmental Services team patrols 365 days a year, collecting rubbish from the estuaries from Sydney Harbour. We remove over 2,000 cubic metres of rubbish, which equates to around about 8,000 household wheelie bins. Sydney Harbour has definitely improved over the years, but there's still a long way to go, and it's going to take a collective effort from government, from local government, from stakeholders, from members of the public to really be committed to cleaning up Sydney so that it is the great place to visit, the pristine harbour, the world icon that it is.
There's some extraordinary leaps and bounds being undertaken to bring back life to the harbour. The collaboration project between North Sydney Council and Sydney Institute of Marine Science through their Living Seawalls project is a great example of this.
So
seawalls are taking up around 50% of the Sydney Harbour foreshore now, and they've replaced a lot of the natural habitat we would normally have. The kinds of microhabitats we've installed here, the rock pools, the crevices, the swim-throughs for fish, these can all contribute to the health of the harbour at other locations as well.
This project and the coastal management program provides an opportunity and a template for other councils to replicate these sorts of programs throughout the harbour.
So, as a mum of 3 kids, we use the harbour every day. You know, we love to hop in the water and swim and snorkel. And so having beautiful, clean water and seeing a diversity of marine life in the water is really important for us.
The white seahorse has recently been listed as the first threatened seahorse species in Australia. It has experienced quite dramatic declines in numbers due to the loss and the degradation of natural habitat, including numerous seagrass beds in Sydney Harbour. We're on the front foot for helping white seahorse recover by working on a collaborative project. So DPI Fisheries have recently been working with a bunch of other organisations. We have collected breeding pairs from Sydney Harbour, bred them in Sydney Aquarium, enhanced their habitat by building seahorse hotels and then reintroduced the juveniles back into Sydney Harbour.
So as a mum, the health of the harbour is so important to me and my family. You know, having somewhere that's safe to swim, beautiful to look at, and know that it's around for future generations.
For me, it's about everyone taking responsibility for making sure that we reduce the rubbish we produce and we put it in the bin and dispose of it properly.
The water and the land are one. There's no division. Just because it's a bit of water doesn't mean that our care for that same spot doesn't extend to the water.
So what we hope that comes out of this is that in the end, we've got a program of works that says this is what we're going to fix and why. And for the next 10 years, we've got an exact plan to get there.
But it requires a coordinated program to be established that leverages off all the great work of all the organisations, but also, you know, expands on that and has leadership and coordination across the catchment.
We must be eternally vigilant to maintaining the quality and the beauty and the wonders of Sydney Harbour.